What's up guys, that guy with the pencil here. So, I just recently released Goddess Clan versus the Demon Clan, and I said I would probably elaborate on some fights. Obviously it's the bigger ones. I don't really care to elaborate on Goddess fodder versus the Demon fodder, because it doesn't seem necessary to me. However, one of the biggest fights I know I have to discuss is Prime Mael versus Prime Meliodas. I sort of just lightly mentioned all the reasoning why I think Prime Meliodas would win, but I suppose I should go into more depth. This is a debate I see a lot online, and I figure there's just a nice way to settle it so people always have something they can reference back when discussing this fight in particular. So, we have two big main points to address when it comes to this battle. The feats and the statements. Of course, those are the obvious basics of any versus battle, but they apply especially in this discussion. I see a lot of people thinking that Prime Meliodas is featless, and that's just not really true. If anything, Prime Meliodas is way more concrete, and he has feats, especially in comparison to Prime Mael. Prime Meliodas is shown to be confident when about to fight off against 3 of the 4 Archangels in regular Demon Mark, and this is instantly proven to not just be bravado, because Meliodas calls for the other Archangels to come help him against this Prime Meliodas. Prime Meliodas also kills 2 other commandments all on his own. Prime Meliodas is also shown to be above all other demons except for his father. This includes Zeldris, all the commandments, the Sick Knights of Black, and possibly even the Endure transformations of Monspeed and Derriere, because Meliodas was able to perform similar feats while still suppressed in Demon Mark, blitzing in front of Ludoshel, stating that he could completely negate and override Elizabeth's magic, and requiring 3 of the 4 Archangels to even fight him. Prime Mael? I mean, he ran from Demon Mark Prime Meliodas, and he's shown stronger than Belian, a commandment tier fighter. While even surviving Demon Mark Prime Meliodas is a feat that puts him above a good deal of characters, that's all he really has. Where the hype and real scaling comes from for both characters is their respective statements made by other characters within the narrative. Meliodas has a lot of good statements, being called the only true successor to the Demon King, known as the mightiest demon outside of his own father, and being the leader of the 10 Commandments. He was said by Zeldris to be able to defeat Escanor as the One, if taking him seriously, was a monster who, with his very presence alone, warded off Mael's son, while in Mael's own realm, where Mael should be at his strongest, and he is repeatedly stated by Zeldris to be superior to him, and is stated to be just as important as the leader of the Archangels, the Goddess Clan's strongest fighter, along with the daughter of the Supreme Deity, according to Gother. All really good statements and scaling for a Prime Meliodas. Prime Mael isn't much of a slouch when it comes to statements either. He is stated by multiple people to be the Goddess Clan's strongest fighter when at his peak. Mael is also stated by Gother to be equal importance to Ludoshel, Meliodas, and Elizabeth when it comes to the balance of the Holy War. Ludoshel states that Mael surpasses him when he reaches his midday peak, and Ludoshel is normally the strongest fighter in the Demon Clan. Ludoshel is normally the strongest fighter in the Goddess Clan. Finally, we get to Mael's biggest statement, that being that he is an equal to Prime Meliodas. Both characters are pretty similar in statements, one statement literally making them equals. Now, what's consistent and inconsistent? Well, a couple things are inconsistent. One, Mael, Ludoshel, Elizabeth, and Meliodas being equals. That's not necessarily true power-wise, but it is true importance-wise. Meliodas is the first son of the Demon King and the former leader of the 10 Commandments, so if he went missing, that would be big. Same with Elizabeth, the daughter of the Supreme Deity. Same with Ludoshel, the current leader of the 4 Archangels and the Goddess Clan's consistently strongest fighter. Power-wise, Meliodas is shown above Ludoshel, and equal to, if not beyond, Elizabeth. Mael's statement about Meliodas being a match for Ludoshel is also disproven by their interaction in the Fairy King's Forest. The final inconsistent statement is Mael being a match for Meliodas. If they're equals, why did Mael run from him? If Ludoshel is stronger than Mael until noon when he reaches his peak, how are Meliodas and Mael equals? Only for a minute? That would explain why Mael ran. He was only matching Meliodas until the minute was up, and then was forced to flee. The only way those statements work is if Mael is a match for Meliodas at the 1. So there is that possibility. If I had to say who's more powerful, with all we've seen and heard, I'm still giving the edge to Prime Meliodas in terms of raw power. He's such a threat that true Prime Body Ludoshel and regular Demon Mark, that the leader of the 4 Archangels calls for his 2 fellow Archangels and orders Nerapasta to get Mael and reinforcements from the Celestial Realm to fight Meliodas. Then you have the fact that Mael ducked the fight with Meliodas when Meliodas is the one with all the disadvantages, fighting Mael in his home realm with no comparable backup. Statements lean towards Mael being Meliodas' equal when at his peak, not necessarily regularly. Ludoshel is normally stronger than Mael except for his near time to noon and his peak, and Ludoshel didn't want Meliodas' fade either. Evidence seems to point to the normal Mael being weaker than the normal Meliodas, and the one Mael may be matching him. Speed, with the two is also pretty relative for the both of them. Maybe with Meliodas having an edge because he could blitz in front of Ludishell, whose whole gimmick really is speed. Alright, so that's them stacking up pure power and speed-wise, but what about their techniques? So, Meliodas has shown multiple techniques like full counter, counter vanish, all of his Hellblaze variants, his darkness manipulation, all of which negate or neutralize Mael's limited offense. Mael does have his light-based attacks like Killing Saucer, Arrow Revelation, and Arc. And you have more powerful attacks like Helios Fair, and of course, Greatest Sun. The main issues for Mael here are that all his powers and main abilities are countered by Meliodas' raw power and Meliodas' techniques. Full counter is literally built to handle all of Mael's massive light beams and magic suns that he can be throwing around to attempt to do massive damage. And since at best Mael matches Meliodas in speed, his attacks that will only double in power will be hard for Mael to dodge, especially with Meliodas chasing right behind them. Even for Mael's Arc Spears, which could spawn directly on top of Meliodas, Meliodas could use his darkness to burst free like we've seen other demons do with Arc Spears. Meanwhile, I'm not really sure what counters Mael has to being sliced in half with the regeneration negating Purgatory Flame, or constantly being slapped in the face with his own attacks at twice their full power. One could argue that Mael's heat would melt Meliodas' blade like it melted Zeldris', but Meliodas' sword didn't melt after the initial fight with Mael. But let's give Mael that. However, once again, just like Zeldris did, Meliodas could just make a sword out of pure darkness. But let's get into their actual combat skill. Who is the better combatant? I'd say they're extremely relative, it's just that Meliodas is more experienced. Meliodas was an adult when Mael was still a kid, so while Mael is an extremely good fighter, I could see Meliodas taking the upper hand. Blade-wise, Mael would be really good, and so would Meliodas. And while Zeldris is stated to have the best blade in the Demon Realm, Meliodas is far from a slouch. They even out in terms of pure skill, if you want to ignore the experience gap. So let's do that and give Mael the benefit of the doubt and say they're perfectly equal skill-wise. The big thing, though, that I've really neglected to mention up to this point is that Meliodas still has Assault Mode. All the feats I've discussed for Prime Meliodas, and all the statements I've discussed for Prime Meliodas, are him in regular Demon Mark. So at any moment, he could burst to full power and annihilate regular Sunshine Mael. The one Mael may just live for a little bit, because the one is drastically more powerful than regular Sunshine, as proven by Escanor, but Assault Mode is drastically above regular Demon Mark, even if you ignore all of Meliodas' statements, all of Meliodas' feats, and ignore the fact that Mael didn't even stay to get wrecked in the past when he had all the advantages. Mael's trump card, the one, is not actually invincible. I could easily see a repeat of what happened against Escanor in his backstory, Meliodas casually beating up Mael for a while in Mael's weaker state, while in regular Demon Mark, then Mael goes to the one and attempts to kill Meliodas, only for Meliodas to flare up into Assault Mode and show why Mael is his inferior and why Meliodas' betrayal was so important that it shifted the entire tide of the Holy War. And let's say this, let's say that that statement about Mael and Meliodas being equals comes from Meliodas in Assault Mode and Mael as the one. The big difference that kicks in for this fight, and the main reason that Mael loses, is the same reason that Escanor loses to Meliodas, which is another video I'll do because I think it's more interesting than even this one. The one lasts for a minute. Assault Mode can literally just be a base for Meliodas. He held it from the Escanor fight until he went into his cocoon. Sorry to say, that's longer than a minute. Mael, unless he goes into his own variation of the Ultimate One, is doing nothing to outlast Assault Mode Meliodas. And Assault Mode Meliodas will just clean him up after he starts to weaken. But to be super hypothetical, let's say Mael does. This is a fight to the death after all, in a neutral space like the mortal world, so Mael cannot run. So let's give Mael the Ultimate One. What changes? Well, that means Mael is now a consistent match for a serious Meliodas in Assault Mode. However, chances are that Meliodas will still outlast Mael. Meliodas stayed in Assault Mode for over a day. The Ultimate One lasted at best like an hour, though it was probably only actually 10 minutes, considering how fast things move in Taizai. So, Meliodas would just be matching Mael and still throwing back all his attacks in his face with twice their power and eventually snuffing out his life. In terms of the actual battle, when you take in a lot of in-character stuff, both characters are extremely confident and cocky. However, obviously Meliodas is a bit more cocky. He literally plays with his food. Zeldris even brings this up in his fight with Escanor, and the main problem for Mael comes in is, what is he really going to do if he's trying to play the long game? Because unless I start this fight like 1 minute, 1 second before noon, or 1 minute before noon, Mael isn't going to last. If it's before midday by a long shot, then he's gonna not be able to do anything. There is no way that Mael's gonna be able to last long enough against a being that's massively stronger than him that is still attempting to kill him. And even if we give Mael the benefit of the doubt, say this fight starts a second before noontime, Meliodas isn't going to play around at that point, because Mael, as a 1, would probably be an actual threat that would make Meliodas flare up to full power. And we've seen that Meliodas can flare up to full power almost instantaneously. He got hit by Escanor and instantly activated Assault Mode. So all this real balance that you got to come in with is, what is Meliodas' mood during the fight? So if Meliodas is in a naturally playful mood, if he's fully in character, Mael may be able to pull out a win if he is very, very careful and doesn't trigger Meliodas' killing intent early. If he doesn't do that, then hypothetically, if he reaches the 1 and he rushes Meliodas before he can activate before he can activate Assault Mode, then maybe Mael gets the win. However, we've seen how fast Meliodas can activate Assault Mode. We also know that Meliodas probably wouldn't let it get that far, and we can also see by their fight, unless we completely assume that it is sometime near afternoon, or like it's afternoon time, Mael ran from Meliodas, and Meliodas never seemed to go full power in that fight. So it seems like, from everything we've seen, even if Mael does go into the full power, the 1, and tries to fight Meliodas, what could happen is something very similar to what happened in the modern fight between the Demon King and in Zeldris' body and Meliodas, where Meliodas has the entire upper hand for the first half of the fight. He's just toying around, and then like the 1 kicks in, and just like the Demon King Zeldris got a few hits in on Meliodas before he activated Demon Mark, the 1 Mael would get a few hits in on Meliodas, which would do some good damage, but then Meliodas activates Demon Mark. No, I keep saying Demon Mark. Meliodas activates Assault Mode, and suddenly Mael's falling apart. Because as his time wanes, he's gonna have to try and finish Meliodas in a minute, and I just don't think he can do that. Like, all his major techniques that would do a lot of damage are full counterable. They are counter-vanishable. Greatest Sun, no matter how big it is, 1 single swing of Meliodas' blade, and that's full countered right back at him. If you want to say that he could use Killing Saucer to get in real close, those can still technically be full countered because they're magic blades. However, you could be like, okay, Meliodas probably wouldn't want to full counter so close from that range, so it would actually go down to a sword fight. So the 1 Mael versus Assault with Meliodas in a sword fight, it's going to be even for the most part, if you want to just ignore the experience gap and say that Meliodas wouldn't be able to pull out a trick or two to defeat that Mael. But it would probably be even. The minute would pass, Meliodas would get bored, and he'd go to kill Mael. That's really it. I'd still say there are chances. There are very specific scenarios where, in character, a Prime Meliodas could lose to a Prime Mael just due to his cocky nature. However, I'd say like 8 to 9 times out of 10, Meliodas is either going to get bored with Mael and kill him, and Mael's going to be unable to run, so he's just dead, or Meliodas allows the fight to go on long enough, but notices the threat that Mael becomes when he transforms into the 1, or when he gets the 1 level of power, since Mael doesn't change with his grace, and then he activates Assault Mode. It's an even fight, and then Meliodas wins. 8 to 9 times out of 10. I think there are very few scenarios where Mael could really pull out a win, just because of what Meliodas is in terms of lore, in terms of character, in terms of feats. He's all around. Prime Meliodas is just a monster. A monster that deserves his respect, though. Like, Prime Meliodas is extremely stupid powerful, but there actually is some weight for Prime Meliodas out there, and I'm going to be talking about that in another video. But that's really it for this one. So, what I'm going to have to ask you to do, I know you're probably going to get tired of me hearing it, but please, like, comment, share, subscribe. If you really did like the video, leave a like. That'd be great for me. If you didn't like the video, leave a dislike, and just tell me in the comment section. Even if you liked the video, leave a comment. Tell me what you agreed with me. Tell me what points I may have missed, because I know no matter how much research I do, there's probably some fact that I missed about this fight, and who knows, that could give Mael the win that I'm just completely missing out on. I'd love to hear it in the comment section down below. And if you could, I know if you're here and you're watching the video and you aren't subscribed, just hit the little subscribe button. You're gonna get more content like this. It's great. It's free. You don't have to worry about doing nothing else about it. You just hit the subscribe button and you're good to go. But That's all I'm asking for. Please subscribe, like, comment, dislike, don't really mind. Just tell me why in the comment section down below. I hope you guys have a wonderful day ahead of you. Next versus battle is going to be something interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing... Here are the two options, basically. It is Prime Meliodas versus the Demon King, because I need to talk about that, because apparently that's a debate online, and I just need to settle that real quick. And either it's that, or it's Edo Itachi and EMS Sasuke versus KCM2 Minato and KCM2 Sage Mode Naruto. What are those two? So in the comments below, you tell me what you want. Like, if you want the Demon King versus Meliodas video to come out first, go ahead. If you want the father and son versus the brothers duo, go ahead and comment that down below. Tell me what you guys want. I'm here to please, and I do want to talk about both. Regardless, once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And this is that guy with the pencil writing off.